Hey Alex, my 10 women superstars are going to be Asuka, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, Natalya, Trish Stratus, Zoe Stark, Fallon Henley, Cora Jade, and Kiana James. And then my men's will be Nathan Frazier, Andre Chase, Duke Hudson, Carmelo Hayes, LA Knight, Sheamus, Butch, Otis, we'll do AJ Styles, and Dolph Ziggler. So I hope I did that right. I hope those are all the people that you need. If there's anything else, let me know. But I hope you have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Later.
This is all 20 of Thea Hail's draft picks. Oh, dude, that would have been some shiz if it landed on Andre Chase. Here are the 20 superstars that I have drafted to represent me. I will be spinning the wheel, and whoever it lands on will represent me in the WWE 2K23 draft and sim. It's gonna be Braun Breaker. Back to WWE 2K23. I have Carmelo Hayes as the NXT champion, Robert Roode as the North American champion, LA Knight and Otis as the NXT tag team champions. It's not a whole lot of tag teams, I just sort of threw it together. And Bianca Belair as the NXT women's champion. Braun Breaker is on the card. No Trish Stratus in sight. Carmelo Hayes picking up the win over Braun Breaker. It looks like Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker are in a rivalry. That Braun Breaker is not winning right now. In the main event, we have Braun Breaker against Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes is on a 3-week win streak over Braun Breaker. Let's head into NXT Spring Break. We have AJ Styles taking on Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode taking on Nathan Frazier for the North American Championship. We have an 8-woman 4-way tornado tag match. It's going to take me a minute to say everybody's name. So Tatum Paxley taking on Cora Jade in a no-holds-barred match. Sheamus and Butch taking on Finn Balor and Solo Sikoa. Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford taking on LA Knight and Otis. Kiana James and Bayley taking on Dakota Kai and Charlotte Flair. Io Sky taking on Rhea Ripley. Bianca Belair will defend her NXT Women's Championship against Liv Morgan. We have the main event as Braun Breaker against Carmelo Hayes. Braun Breaker losing the feud, and the score is still 0-0. Trish Stratus not being on the card. Braun Breaker taking on Dolph Ziggler. That'll be a point to me. Trish Stratus finally makes the card, and Liv Morgan gets the win. Braun Breaker gets another win over Dolph Ziggler in the main event of NXT. In the event, we have Braun Breaker picking up the win over Dolph Ziggler. Main event, we have Braun Breaker taking on Dolph Ziggler. Braun Breaker finishing the feud. This week's edition of NXT starts off with Zoe Starks teaming up with Trish Stratus to go against Bianca Belair and Natalya. Braun Breaker is in a triple threat match against Sheamus and Finn Balor. Let's see if... Alright. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is they just sort of disappear sometimes, or they just show up. It's one or the other. I always double check. Braun Breaker picks up the win over Sheamus and Finn Balor. This week, both superstars are on the card. We have Braun Breaker taking on Finn Balor, picking up the win against Finn Balor. And Trish Stratus is gone again. Listen, I know it says that both of them are on the card again, but how much do you want to bet that Trish Stratus just sort of disappears for the 3rd week in a row? Carmelo Hayes, the NXT champion, picks up the win against Braun Breaker, and just like that, she's gone. Braun Breaker once again taking on Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes picking up the win, and Trish She comes out to the ring and she just says, nah, dude, she doesn't want to do this, all right? Great American Bash. We have Robert Roode taking on Austin Theory for the NXT North American Championship. Tag team titles are on the line once again. Sheamus will take on Finn Balor. When did Carmelo Hayes lose the championship? Wasn't Carmelo Hayes the NXT champion? So I'm so dumbfounded right now. But we're just gonna carry on like he lost the championship, I guess? So yeah, Robert Roode retains. The Street Profits are the NXT Tag Team Champions. Finn Balor is the new NXT Champion. I'm gonna start keeping track of that because that's some weird stuff that happened. Bianca Belair and Natalya pick up the win over Zoe Stark and Trish Stratus in the main event. Braun Breaker taking on Finn Balor, the NXT Champion. Braun Breaker gets the job done. We're running things back from last week, and no, we're not, because Nathan Frazier says, no, that is not happening. Zoe Stark and Trish Stratus will be taking on Bianca Belair and Natalya this week, and Braun Breaker will be taking on Finn Balor, as Braun Breaker, I think, has the edge on Finn Balor here. Once again, Natalya and Bianca Belair getting the win over Zoe Stark and Trish Stratus. This week we are running back Finn Balor and Braun. We're running Braun Breaker against Carmelo Hayes. Let's see what happened in the news. Finn Balor had ruthlessly attacked Braun Breaker before the bell could ring. There's little doubt that the motivation behind the Superstars' assault is to win their upcoming title match, and by any means necessary. This week, Trish Stratus and Zoe Stark will be taking on Tatum Paxley and Shayna Baszler. Braun Breaker and Finn Balor are going to run it back, with Finn Balor getting the win over Braun Breaker this week, and Trish Stratus and Zoe Stark getting the win over Tatum Paxley and Shayna Baszler. Balor against Braun Breaker. We have a triple threat match between Liv Morgan, Charlotte Flair, and Rhea Ripley. We have a tag team main event. Braun Breaker getting the win over Finn Balor. That'll be a point added to my score. And I was kind of hoping Trish Stratus would make a surprise appearance, but she is nowhere in sight. Leading into NXT Heatwave, we are starting off the pay-per-view with Carmelo Hayes and AJ Styles going against each other in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Austin Theory taking on Nathan Frazier. Io Sky versus Thea Hail. Tatum Paxley against Dakota Kai. Matt Riddle versus Sheamus in a no-holds-barred match. Robert Roode defending the North American Championship against Butch. Wendy Chu challenging Charlotte Flair for the NXT Women's Championship. Drew McIntyre taking on Dolph Ziggler. Braun Breaker stepping up to the plate saying, Finn Balor, when the fuck did you win the NXT Championship from Carmelo Hayes? I don't know if he got injured and they vacated it or something, but it is what it is. Finn Balor getting the win over Braun Breaker and retaining the NXT Championship. No Trish Stratus on the card this PLE. Sheamus picking up the win against Braun Breaker. Still no Trish Stratus. This week we have Sheamus against Braun Breaker again, but we actually have Braun Breaker taking on Drew McIntyre in a losing battle. The NXT before Deadline, we have Sheamus taking on Braun Breaker. Trish Stratus is in a fatal 4-way match against Tatum Paxley, Natalya, and Liv Morgan. I think that's all that we need to see. Braun Breaker ends up defeating Matt Riddle in the match where he was supposed to go up against Sheamus. Natalya gets the win in the fatal 4-way match. NXT Deadline opens up with Sheamus taking on Braun Breaker. And no Trish Stratus in sight. Sheamus wins the rivalry against Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker is competing in a triple threat match against Dolph Ziggler and the NXT champion Finn Balor. Dolph Ziggler getting the win. Thea Hail hates to see that, I'm not gonna lie. The NXT before Halloween Havoc, we have Braun Breaker taking on Dolph Ziggler and Matt Riddle in a triple threat match. Dolph Ziggler once again, the king of triple threat matches, beating Matt Riddle and Braun Breaker. Trish Stratus hasn't been on the card in like 3 weeks, I think. We are at Halloween Havoc. We have Carmelo Hayes taking on AJ Styles, Ricochet taking on Robert Roode. This week's edition of NXT has Braun Breaker taking on AJ Styles, where AJ Styles gets the win. Braun Breaker once again taking on AJ Styles. Still no Trish Stratus in sight. Braun Breaker gets his win over AJ Styles this week. Maybe Trish Stratus is just waiting. Alright, never mind. I was going to say maybe she's just waiting for the Rumble. Make her surprise return and win it. But we have Alexa Bliss and Trish Stratus taking on Tatum Paxley and Kiana James. And we also are rerunning Braun Breaker against AJ Styles. Trish Stratus and Alexa Bliss getting the win against Tatum Paxley and Kiana James. AJ Styles ended up beating Butch. I'm guessing Braun Breaker decided to take a hiatus. Braun Breaker is back taking on AJ Styles. AJ Styles getting the win this week. This week, once again, we have AJ Styles defeating Braun Breaker. Leading into NXT Vengeance Day, we have Io Sky taking on Bianca Belair. The Street Profits taking on LA Academy is, I guess, what we could call them. We have Bayley and Kiana James taking on Trish Stratus and Zoe Stark. Shayna Baszler versus Charlotte Flair. Braun Breaker against AJ Styles. And Robert Roode taking on Austin Theory. AJ Styles getting the win over Braun Breaker. Kiana James and Bayley defeating Trish Stratus and Zoe Stark. We are at NXT Vengeance Day. We have Sheamus taking on Drew McIntyre. Carmelo Hayes versus Matt Riddle. Nathan Frazier against Butch. Once again, an 8-woman 4-way tornado tag. Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins taking on LA Knight and Otis. Alexa Bliss challenging Natalya for the NXT Women's Championship. Braun Breaker makes it onto the card against AJ Styles, and no Trish Stratus. AJ Styles wins the rivalry against Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker taking on Sheamus this week. And Trish Stratus is in a triple threat match against Alexa Bliss and Shayna Baszler, where Trish Stratus does pick up the win, and Sheamus defeats Braun Breaker. NXT before War Games. Cue William Regal real quick.
War Games!
Thank you. We have Solo Sikoa against Robert Roode, Io Sky versus Natalya, LA Knight and Otis against the Street Profits. Shayna Baszler against Kiana James, Liv Morgan versus Alexa Bliss, and Sheamus against Braun Breaker. Now we've got Braun Breaker against Andre Chase. Still no Trish Stratus. We have an 8-woman War Games match. Starting off the show, we have Io Sky taking on Natalya. Gigi Dolan and Wendy Chu taking on Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. Thea Hail taking on Bianca Belair. We have LA Academy taking on the Street Profits. Solo Sikoa going up against Robert Roode. Alexa Bliss against Trish Stratus. Sheamus taking on Braun Breaker for the NXT Championship. Then we have the 8-man War Games match. Alright, so let's see here. Alexa Bliss picks up the win over Trish Stratus, and Sheamus picks up the win and retains his NXT Championship over Braun Breaker. We are rerunning Braun Breaker against Sheamus, where Braun Breaker picks up the W. This week, once again, we are rerunning Sheamus against Braun Breaker, where Sheamus gets the win. We're just going to keep rerunning this, I guess. No, Sheamus defeats Matt Riddle. Let's see what happened in the news. Braun Breaker attacked Sheamus before the match. The challenger bent on inflicting harm on the champion, trying to weaken him before they face off with the title on the line. We are at NXT New Year's Evil. Let's see if Trish Stratus makes it onto the card, in which she does not, but Sheamus retains his NXT Championship. This week we have Braun Breaker taking on Drew McIntyre. Psych, Matt Riddle, bro. Are we finally going to see Drew McIntyre take on Braun Breaker? Yes, we will, and Braun Breaker will be on the losing end. Trish Stratus also gets the win over Shayna Baszler. We are at the Royal Rumble, NXT edition. We have a Women's Royal Rumble match, a one-on-one match with Io Sky taking on Wendy Chu. The NXT North American Championship is on the line. Duke Hudson steps up to the plate against Robert Roode. Same tag team match. We also have Drew McIntyre taking on Braun Breaker. AJ Styles taking on Sheamus in the Men's Royal Rumble match. Wendy Chu is the new NXT Women's Champion. Robert Roode retains. The Street Profits retain. Braun Breaker gets the job done against Drew McIntyre. Sheamus retains his NXT Championship. We will take it into the news. I'm not seeing anybody winning the Rumble. I guess there was no Rumble. Alright. This is going great. Let's just double check, right? Surely? No? They said sight, dude. This week we are running back Braun Breaker and Drew McIntyre. Trish Stratus is not on the card. No, Braun Breaker's not on the card either. Braun Breaker will take on Drew McIntyre and get the job done. Dude, Trish Stratus is on that part-time schedule right now, I guess, in this universe mode. Braun Breaker will take on Drew McIntyre for the second week in a row, and Braun Breaker will once again get the job done. Braun Breaker takes on Drew McIntyre. Braun Breaker once again gets the job done over Drew McIntyre. Yeah, Braun Breaker gets the job done once again against Drew McIntyre. Dude, I just don't understand why Trish Stratus isn't on the card. I fixed the divisions. I made sure that she was in the divisions. I know in the last episode I had to go back through and fix them just to show proof. Like, she's there. She's at the bottom, but she's there. She's just not making the card every week. Once again, we have Braun Breaker taking on Drew McIntyre. Braun Breaker getting the win once again. I believe that's the third week in a row. NXT before Battleground. Will Trish Stratus make the card? Braun Breaker gets another win over Drew McIntyre. If Trish Stratus doesn't make any of the weekly NXT tapings, then it looks like this one's going to be a runaway. We have Sheamus taking on Dolph Ziggler for the NXT Championship to open up the show. Austin Theory stepping up to the plate against Robert Roode. Wendy Chu defending the NXT Women's Championship against Shayna Baszler. Can I get a round of applause, please? Zoe Stark will be teaming up against Zoe Stark will be teaming up with Trish Stratus to take on Tatum Paxley and Bayley. And hopefully this finishes up the 2.5-month rivalry between Drew McIntyre and Braun Breaker. Drew McIntyre finally getting his redemption against Braun Breaker. And Bayley and Tatum Paxley also defeat the returning Trish Stratus. So 2K really said, these guys are going to go back and forth in a rivalry for the NXT Championship. Sheamus will win both rivalries, retaining his championship just to lose it to Dolph Ziggler and then throw them in a triple threat match on a weekly episode of NXT, where we have, Braun Breaker getting the win over the two of them. We are in the home stretch to NXT Stand and Deliver, where we have Braun Breaker taking on Finn Balor and Dolph Ziggler. And no Trish Stratus in sight. Finn Balor getting the job done. Yeah, I think that was a runaway. Unfortunately, 2K didn't want to see Trish Stratus on the weekly episodes of NXT, but we are at NXT Stand and Deliver, where we are opening up the show with a ladder match between AJ Styles and Dolph Ziggler, Io Sky taking on Natalya, Butch going up against Austin Theory, the Street Profits against Otis and LA Knight. We have Asuka, Wendy Chu, Bianca Belair, and Rhea Ripley going at it in a fatal four-way match for the NXT Women's Championship. Liv Morgan taking on Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss and Dakota Kai taking on Kiana James and Bayley. That is your main event of NXT Stand and Deliver. Dolph Ziggler retaining, Natalya picking up the win, Austin Theory winning, Street Profits picking up the win, Wendy Chu retaining, Charlotte Flair picking up the win against Liv Morgan, and we are ending the season with Bayley and Kiana James defeating Alexa Bliss and Dakota Kai. I would like to thank Thea Hail for taking part in today's video. I had fun with it. I wish that Trish Stratus was on the card and it was a bit closer game. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like on the video, hit that big red subscribe button. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and comment down below who you would like to see on the channel and who you would like to see in the next WWE 2K23 Draft and Sim. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!